Hello, friend. Welcome to Feel Good Alcohol Free. I'm Lindsay, your host, sober coach, and the woman who is going to help you quit drinking for good. And I just want to start by saying this. I know your time is valuable, and the fact that you're here choosing to press play means the world. You're not just listening to a podcast, you're taking a moment for yourself, taking care of yourself, and that matters. It counts. And if you've ever said to yourself, I know what I should be doing, but I can't seem to do it, you're not alone. Whether it's trying to break the habit of drinking, create more peace in your day, or just stop feeling constantly behind, most of us don't struggle because we're lazy or unmotivated. We struggle because our habits are wired for survival, not for peace. And to change that, it takes more than just willpower. It takes mindset, clarity, and calm leadership from within. And that's exactly why I brought on today's guest. Today's conversation is one you're going to want to lean in for. I'm talking with Claire Roberts, meditation and mindset coach, writer, and all-around calm bringer. We're diving deep into habits and mindset today, not just the pretty parts, but the real messy human stuff. Because here's the truth. If you're overwhelmed, running on empty, or stuck in old patterns, this episode might just be the reset you didn't even know you needed. So here we go. I want to give a warm welcome to Claire. I am so thrilled to have you on the podcast today. What a good reason for us to sit down and have a conversation.
Oh my goodness, Lindsay, I'm so happy to be here and really excited. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I can't wait to get started.
Me too. I am most excited about what our listeners are going to learn about today and have the opportunity to reflect on. So we're going to talk about why willpower alone won't change your habits and what actually will, how to reclaim your energy and calm, even if your mind never stops racing. I need to learn more about that. And the hidden mindset blocks that keep us in cycles of burnout or self-sabotage, as well as the role of writing and reflection in habit change. So let's get into it. Okay, Claire, I want to start with your story. You've been a teacher, leader, and now a habits and mindset expert. What led you to this work, and what personal shifts inspired your focus on time, energy, and more specifically, calm?
Yeah, so Lindsay, I spent like 2 decades of my life in a state of doing all of the things all of the time. I was working like 80-hour weeks and submerging myself in work just through and through. And I think I was trying to be all things to all people. But one thing was for sure, I was absolutely exhausted all of the time. But I assume that that's what success looks like, right? And to keep my head above water, I was studying meditation. I was going to yoga classes all of the time. And I even went so far as taking meditation and mindfulness teacher training courses and my yoga teacher training courses. And I think I was just crowbarring wellness into my life. Like I will be balanced and I can be peaceful. Like it was some goal that I had on this pedestal that I had to tick off the list every day. I was just chasing calm all of the time. And so I was spending all of my time on what I thought success looked like. And I had this mentality of like, well, why would I go to bed early when I could spend another 4 hours working? That's time that I've got that I can use. So I was trying to control time as well as chasing calm. And then I hit my 30s and I lost a baby. That hit me really hard. It was kind of riddled with all sorts of complications and quite scary ones that threw my health into question at that point. And that took me a year or so to recover from physically. And then cue my late 30s, and I'd lost another 5 babies at that point, all complicated, all requiring surgery. And yeah, my body healed, but I don't think my grief ever did. And I ended up being too busy escaping the sadness that I felt from that and trying to be this superwoman that was ticking all of the boxes and still trying to be what success looked like. And I was being all things to all people, but except myself. And again, I was this picture of wellness on the surface and success on the outside, but I was using yoga and meditation just to get through the day and just to keep my head above water. And then I was using wine and caffeine and sugar and sleep deprivation just to get me through the evenings. And so it was just littered with lows. It was littered with moments where I'd be on the bathroom floor crying, just feeling totally lost and totally alone. I'd have 3 glasses of wine after work on a Friday, and I'd black out on the tube on the way home in London and wouldn't know how I got home that evening. And I realized that by the time I was a mother and I got drunk one more time, but I was in that position of responsibility with a child, it's like, this is enough, you know? So I think that was my wake up call. And it was enough to make me ditch alcohol 4 years ago. And interestingly, in ditching alcohol, I got the best sleep of my life. And then it was the domino effect. It made me ditch a whole load of other things that had been dragging me down. And then I realized that my meditation was so much deeper. My mindfulness just became a way of life. It wasn't something that I had to force into the day and tick off my list. It was just how I lived. And then I started to feel like what success really was for me. And rather than being all things to all people and doing all the things all the time, it was the opposite. It was like I stripped out all of the complications and all of the noise. And what I was left with was something that just felt so much more clear and so much more simple. And at that point, I realized that I had time and I had calm and I had energy. And they were the 3 things that I'd been working so hard for. And yet I'd ignored the biggest things in my life that I needed to change to get there. And so I think in learning those almighty lessons that life had been trying to teach me for a couple of years, well, for 20 years, 2 decades, I then realized I was in a place where I was ready to teach this to others, and I was ready to coach other people to try and save them from some of that hell that I'd experienced myself, if that makes any sense.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, and thank goodness you did, because you're just
Right.
such a wonderful human. And I love the fact that we've gotten to know each other so well over probably the last year, at least year and a half,
Mm-hmm.
even. So, there's a few things that you said that I really want to call out for our listeners today. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out how incredibly similar our lives have been. First, also chased yoga teacher training to find Zen to my burnout in the corporate life. So
Right.
I can 100% relate to that. If there was a yoga retreat or anything within a couple of hours, like I was signed up for it. I was always in some sort of yoga teacher training because I just felt like that was going to cure me. I also thought that it was going to be the ticket to not drinking anymore. And then also fertility issues as well, which is where so much of my drinking was born from, is, really trying to escape that reality of what my life was. So I can absolutely relate to everything that you're saying, because as women, we feel like modern women, like, well, if we are in this corporate life, we have to be able to do that and have a family. And we have to be able to show up and be on all the time. And it
Mm.
just isn't, it's not healthy. And so I love this talk track of yours. And I love how you've turned what felt really hard into something really good. And for others, I'm wondering if we can switch into some of the tactical things that you did, like share with the women who are listening today who are feeling burned out and are drinking wine at night to cope with all of their stress. How do you slow down without being, or at least feeling, less productive? Or how to have clarity in that decision making?
Oh my gosh, this is such a good question, because I think so often we kind of confuse being productive with being busy. So we keep on this kind of busy treadmill because we think that that's what productivity looks like. And then we fall into this trap of moving so quickly because we're on autopilot most of the time. And when we're in that state of autopilot, we miss the days that are right in front of us. The days are happening around us. We're going through the motions. But on days like that, even the things that relax us, like the yoga classes, can end up feeling like another thing that we're ticking off our to-do list. And we're not necessarily as present as we want to be. So, and it is kind of born out of fear. We're scared to slow down because we feel like we have to keep going at the speed that we're at to be able to accomplish all of the things that we have to do. And here's the myth of being busy, right? It's some of the stuff that we're doing, we don't really want to do, or we don't necessarily have to do, or we could be doing it more efficiently if we only gave ourselves the time or the space to just pause in our days and to take a step backwards to be able to see everything more clearly. And so I talk about the pause a lot. I talk about the pause when when I'm writing, when I'm talking to clients, just these micro pauses that we can build into our days. And by micro pause, I mean even less than a minute. It can be just like 10, 20 seconds or so, just to be aware of what we're doing, to give ourselves that space to think and to check in with how we're feeling, to slow down in the moment and to just get off that treadmill or to press pause on the treadmill for a second so that we can question what we're actually doing. And we can question, do we have to be going about this the way that we're doing it? Do we even have to do all of these jobs on our list today? Do we have to say yes to the next thing that's coming onto our plate or the next thing that somebody's asking of us? And we can use that micro pause to reflect on how best we want to move forward and what we want to do next. And this works as well around decision making and around the noise of decision making. I mean, first thing, it's worth noticing that if you are sleep deprived, which I know within your line of work in kind of helping people get on that sober journey, sleep deprivation is something that we've just become accustomed to when we're drinking. And then all of a sudden we start to get sleep and the world becomes clearer. And so if you are struggling with sleep deprivation, and of course, some of the people listening to this might have kids at home, and then there's not much you can do if they're keeping you awake at night. But you're doing the best you can with what you've got. But ultimately, if you're sleep deprived, that's going to affect your ability to make decisions. But there is something else that you can do to help with the decision making. And well, there's a nice little anecdote, actually, if I can mention it, and I hope you don't mind me going off on this tangent, because it happened to me the other day, and it made me come back to this and realize just how much noise we're exposed to around decision making today. So I had like an injury from running recently, and my osteo advised me to get one of those foam rollers, that you can roll on to kind of massage your muscles.
Oh,
And,
yes, familiar.
you know those well, yeah. They're never pleasant. They're always painful. And so I'm on Amazon thinking, right, this is a quick job. I'm just going to buy the foam roller, get it delivered. But then there's a whole world of foam rollers that opens up to me on Amazon. So I'm like, I could just go for the top one because it's right there in front of me. It meets the price range that I had in my head. This is fine. No. Because then I start scrolling down and I'm thinking, well, that one's more expensive. Does that make it a better foam roller? And then I'm like, oh, they come in different colors. I hadn't thought about the world of colors. And I'm like, do I need to read reviews on foam rollers now? I mean, is one foam roller going to be better than another foam roller? And I slipped back because I was a bit tired at the time. I had a frustrating day and I slipped back into my default mode of kind of listening to the noise and letting myself get dragged into it. 15 minutes later, I'm just lost in a process that doesn't have to be there. And I realized that I had that presence of mind to suck myself out. I went back to the first one, bought it. I was done with it. But I phoned my friend and because we share these ridiculous stories about the moments we have. I phoned her just to say, what am I doing? I slipped into this mindset. And she said, oh my God, Claire, she said, I had the same yesterday. I went into town to get a pair of new trainers. And then I thought, maybe they'll be cheaper online. So I'll go back home, I'll look at them online, and then there's new colorways. And then you spend an hour on that online search that you didn't need to be on. And then you're so paralyzed by the analysis of it all that you stick it on your to-do list for another day and the decision hasn't been made. Whereas you could have just bought them in the first shop you were in and made the decision much more easily. And I think this is the problem with the world that we're in today. We've got so much noise everywhere and so much distraction, particularly with the world online and with social media and all of these different voices we've got, that if we don't make a concerted effort to reduce that noise and to make simple decisions as simple as they need to be, then we can make every decision much bigger than it needs to be. And then no wonder we've got no capacity for the decisions in our life that genuinely need the time and attention. And so that would be the tip that I would give to the majority of people that I work with, and something that obviously I still work on myself if I slip into that. It's just to reduce as much noise and distraction as possible so that you can see more clearly the things that really need your attention. And that takes a bit of awareness, but it's possible.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I really love this a lot. It's almost like we call it, decision fatigue, but it's the analysis paralysis. Like, I think that's another buzzword that they call it. And it's the research fatigue, because you're right. Not all foam rollers are created equal. They have different densities or whatever for firmness and this and that. And it's like, well, now how do I figure out which one that I need? And I've always been a gut decision maker. I mean, obviously I'm a data-driven decision maker, but I'm a gut decision maker. Like, I move quickly based on how I feel about something. And my husband is the opposite. He's going to be more deliberate, more patient. He's going to research the foam rollers for a month before we buy one. And I'm like, my injury could have been healed by now.
Yes. Right?
Like, I just want to do the thing. I don't want to spend. And then there's also this element of, I think what you were saying before, how do we make more space for the bigger, more impactful decisions that we need to make, and these little ones over sneakers and foam rollers and, whether to put a rain jacket on or not, like how do we minimize the capacity that we use for those? Yeah, it is hard. So let's gosh, I feel so seen right now, Claire. That's all I have to say.
Oh my goodness. It's that I think I had to share it because I think sometimes people put, if you say that you study mindfulness and you teach mindfulness and meditation, they think that you never have these moments where you just slip back into your autopilot default. And it's like, oh my goodness, I still have these moments, right? It's
Of
like,
course.
yeah.
What you just said is so incredibly important for the women who are listening to this podcast, because these are women who are, many of them, saying, how come I can't just quit drinking for good? Why do I keep going back? And it's because our brain wants the autopilot. Our brain wants the familiar. And so it's very easy to fall back into these old patterns. Even a mastering decision maker like yourself, still, we fall back into that autopilot mode because that's what our brains are, actually very lazy. That's what they want. Okay. How do we integrate these practices in, like all areas of our lives? What does this look like in real life? From the deciding what jacket to wear to deciding whether or not to like take your family to Disney World or something like.
Right. I mean, I'm going to share this at the end as a takeaway, so don't worry if you missed some of this. But I mean, one of the methods that I still use today, and it was something that I kind of, it evolved, I guess, way back when I was working in educational leadership, and I was a vice principal in charge of behavior. So I had, and this is like secondary education, so dealing with the teenagers every day. And I mean, gosh, these guys, I was in inner city London, and they were challenging environments, and these kids had the weight of the world. Like they really did. And they'd often get asked to leave a lesson and to come to my office because they'd, got angry at a teacher, or they didn't want to do the work, or they were just being, a little bit challenging. And they didn't really know how to express that frustration they were feeling in a polite way. And so they came to me because I was supposed to punish them. And in reality, I didn't do that. I'd sit down with them, and I just talked to me. I just let them just get everything out of their system. And most of it was complaining about the teacher, complaining about the lesson, just airing off everything that's on their back. But then I'd always say to them, okay, just stop for a moment, just stop and just breathe, and just breathe, just like have a moment where there's a bit of peace and a bit of quiet, and let's just, like, what else is going on? What else is happening in your world? Like, how are you feeling? Like, check in with yourself. Park the lesson, park that frustration, but how are you feeling? And often then what would come up is the stuff that's really going on. And it would be, my mum's really sick and we can't pay the bills at home, and I'm having to care for my siblings. And I don't know what we're going to eat tonight, and I've got exams to pass, and I don't know how to do this anymore. And he'd be like, all right, okay, so we can't fix all of that. We can't fix all of that right now. But what we can do is first start really simple. It's like, what does your body need right now? Have you eaten? Have you eaten breakfast this morning? No, you haven't eaten. Let's get you some food. And so you'd start on the basics. And it's like, start small. What does your body need to feel like it's in a place of nourishment and it can move forward? Do you need sleep? Do you need food? Do you need water? What do you need? Let's start with the basics. Now let's build on that. What can we do short term to end the chaos at school? Because we can fix that. That's something I can absolutely control and help you with. And then you can grow from there and look bigger picture. And I think all too often we're so focused on the bigger picture and everything that's going wrong, and we just see everything. And again, it's like what I said about the noise of decisions. It's like the noise of life and everything that we feel like we're carrying on our shoulders, when it's all weighing down on our minds at the same time. There's too much, we can't cope with that. But in this process of stopping and pausing and breathing and just checking in with yourself and just checking in, what else is going on for me right now? Like, what's underneath this craving to have a glass of wine? What's underneath this endless scrolling I'm doing on my phone? What's underneath this pushing bedtime for another 2 or 3 hours? Like, what's going on that is getting me into these patterns of behavior or stopping me from making decisions that maybe I'm not really looking closely at? And it's these micro pauses that you can weave into your day where you just check in with your body after you've had a deep breath. And then you can go, all right, what's my next step? Not what are my steps for the next week, or how am I going to deal with all of this stuff that's on my shoulders? Like, what can I do next in this moment to make me incrementally feel better? and make a choice that's going to be taking me a step down a road, investing in my best future self, rather than a step down a road that's going to take me down even lower into this hole that I'm already falling into. And that technique has been something that has worked for me endlessly. And it's still something that, I will use today with, with clients that I work for. And so that's the power for me, these micro pauses and weaving that awareness. I mean, it's mindfulness, right? It's just that I think sometimes when we think of mindfulness, we think, oh my God, I need to take an hour out of my day, or I need to do a meditation. And it's like, no, this is just that human awareness that we need to get off that treadmill and check in with ourselves and think, what next? Because that's something that I can manage.
Yes. Okay. So I like this approach. This is something we talk about this a lot inside my coaching container, where it's like everybody, we all want the outcome. We want to be 6 months sober. We
Mm-hmm.
want to be a year sober, or we want to lose 20 pounds, whatever that outcome is. But the overwhelm that comes from the day to day things that we have to do to get to that point is where we can really take an opportunity to just slow down, and let's not think about the outcome that we want. And let's just think about this short term thing. Like, what are the things that I can do this week that are in my control? And one of those is check in with myself and say, like, how am I feeling right now? What do I need right now? What is one thing that I can do to support myself in this moment? And exactly what your point is, it doesn't need to be an hour. Like, even if it's changing your environment just to get a little fresh perspective, like often what I do, and I did this a lot in early sobriety, is I just go outside and do kind of one lap around my house, maybe pull a couple weeds or something, but it's like less than 5 minutes. And then I'm back doing whatever I needed to do before. But it really is like we have to stop. And another thing that you were saying earlier around like the thoughts going around in our head, when we're always thinking, we're not actually processing or looking at our what we're dealing with objectively, because it's just swirling around in our head.
Yeah,
And
it's so
so
true.
as a writer, you have a lot of experience probably with how writing helps you process your thoughts. And which is why journaling is so important,
Mm,
yet so many of us resist it for
right.
many reasons. I used to be one of those people. So yeah, this is just stop. Just this
Just stop.
power of the pause. You
Yeah,
have to stop.
that's true.
I love it. Let's shift gears a little bit. You often talk about reclaiming energy and calm. So, for somebody listening who feels overwhelmed or stuck in survival mode, what's one small shift that they can start with today?
Yeah. In terms of one small shift, I'm probably going to give you two or three because
Great.
I find it really hard just to stick to one thing. Whenever everybody goes, give me your one best tip or your one favorite film, I'm like, I'll give you five. So, yeah, sorry. You've got choices. Let's reframe it as choices. Oh my goodness. If you are stuck in survival mode, I mean, first thing first, let's give some credit to realizing that you're stuck in survival mode, right? And to have that awareness that you're stuck, because I know for me, I had a whole 2 decades of feeling stuck in survival mode, but not really recognizing that I actually was stuck. I just thought that's what we do, right? As humans, that's thriving in your 20s and 30s, isn't it? Oh no,
That's what
no,
I
it
thought.
doesn't have to be.
Yeah, that's what I was subscribed to as well. So,
It's madness, isn't it? It's just wow. So yeah. So first things first. If you recognize you're feeling stuck, kudos to you for realizing that. Because if you're conscious, then you can do something about it. So yeah, the first thing you can do is, as I've just mentioned, take that moment to step back and to really focus on those pauses in your day and start with the basics. Start with, have you had enough sleep? Have you eaten? Are you hydrated enough? Do you need connection with somebody? Do you need to phone a friend? Do you just need that basic foundation of what we need as humans before we start to layer on all of the extra nice accessories of life?
I am going to share the number one thing that women in my programs talk about,
Go for it.
and that is loneliness.
Mhm.
And I don't know if this is like stemming maybe from when we all isolated so much during the pandemic that for me, it took me a long time to put myself back out there into
Right.
the world. And even sometimes I'm like, oh, that's a lot of effort, like I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But this is what I hear. People move and it's
Uh-huh.
hard to make new friends, or you start a new job and for a little while, your old coworkers, you still get together here and there, but then that kind of fades. And so connection is almost, for me, I feel like it's the core value that I want everyone to really lean into, whether you think that you need it or not. Even if women are saying, well, I'm an introvert, that doesn't mean that we don't crave connection.
Right. Exactly that. Yeah, it's exactly that. Because I would describe myself as an introvert most of the time, but I still crave connection. I don't need it on a massive room of people connection. Yeah, I just need that close friendship, somebody that I can speak to, that connection. And I think what feeds into that is this feeling of being drained a lot of the time. Like we're giving so much to lots of different people that we don't necessarily have, or we don't feel like we've got the time left to make space for those connections, but we miss it when it's not there. We just maybe don't notice. That's such a good point. The loneliness side of things, I would definitely align myself with that over those 2 decades of survival mode.
When I think about the number of friends that I kind of just detached from
Oh,
because I was feeling a certain way or I was feeling busy, burnt out, and it's like a text goes a long way.
yes. Yeah.
It doesn't, again, just like before, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't mean you have to like make grand plans with a person. Having a little text thread that happens a few times a week is
Yeah.
meaningful.
It definitely is. Knowing that somebody's there and you're heard and they've got your back and vice versa. Yeah, for sure.
Like us.
I know. I love this.
I love our text thread, Claire.
Really random texters. And often I think people think, oh, it's been too long. I can't text that person, or I've got to write a really long text. But most of the time you'd be surprised if you just drop, a really random little text or a comment, that people are so pleased to hear from you, and it doesn't have to be a big thing. So yeah, if
Yes.
anybody is feeling that, for sure, text someone today. It makes all the
Yes, I
difference.
tell women in my group, I don't care if it's been 5 years since
Yes.
you've talked to someone. If there is a woman who you were friends with at one
Mm-hmm.
point and you haven't talked to them in a long time, you send her a text message and I don't know. I think it's going to go better more than it goes worse.
Yes. For sure. Yeah, I'm on board with that. Yes, I've gone off on a
Okay,
tangent
sorry,
now.
I'm
No,
derailing.
sorry. So I think that was my first point in terms of, yeah, the basics in your life. Make sure you've ticked your basic needs as a human being, all of those simple things. And then the second thing I'd suggest, if you're in survival mode and you feel a bit stuck, is to try and step back from your list of everything and look at what doesn't need to be done. What can you genuinely take off your list, or what can you say no to? I think we're so used to saying yes, and we're in this society of like people pleasing, particularly as women. It's definitely more of a female trait. So what can you say no to? And what are you doing on autopilot that maybe doesn't have to be done? What can you do more efficiently? What maybe haven't you stepped back from and looked at? Is there another way? And start saying no to things. If you don't want to do it, it's absolutely fine. If you don't have to do it, so you have a choice, make that choice. Yeah, for sure. There's liberation in that, right? It's lovely. And it gets easier the more you say no.
It does. It does. At first, like we talk about this a lot in my group. At first, there's a little burn. It doesn't
Yes.
feel good. We're worried. Oh, are they going to be disappointed in me? Are they mad at me? And so, but like after a while, they'll get used to you saying no.
Oh, for sure. It's those boundaries, isn't it, that we so rarely
Yeah.
have. I was such a people pleaser throughout. I've gone off on an aside now. I actually have a little necklace I'm wearing that says the word no on it, just because I was such a people pleaser throughout most of my life. I was like, yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do all of the things. When would you like it? Yesterday? Fine. And yeah, I got my little necklace that just has no on it. It's like a little reminder to self. Say no.
That is the best gift. The
That makes
gift
me
that
sound really
keeps on
negative.
giving.
Like, I'm not a glass half empty person, honestly. And my last top tip would be the way that you start and end your day frames your experience of that day. So I think all too often, particularly again in today's society, and this is for no fault of our own because it's been designed this way, we fall straight onto our phone and we're on it until the moment we go to sleep. And we often sleep with it next to our bed. And so if anything we can do to take that away and to reclaim that time and that space, even if it's just 10, 15 minutes first thing in the morning, ideally it'd be a little longer, 20 minutes, half an hour, when you first wake up and before you go to bed, just to have that clarity and that peace and that moment to sit and think, do I have an intention for the day? Is there anything that's on my mind today that maybe I need to check in with now? How am I feeling? Is there anything that's worrying me? Do I need to journal? Do I need to write anything down? Do I just need to sit? Or do I need to walk outside just for 5, 10 minutes, get some fresh air? It's anything you can do to stay away from being sucked into the noise again, because they don't deserve emails, social media, none of that deserves the space in your mind the moment you wake up or just before you're going to sleep. That is like that precious sanctuary time, isn't it? It's like, don't let anybody take that away from you. They don't own that real estate in your mind, so don't give them it. That would be my
Oh my
top
gosh,
tip.
this is probably one of the best tips in my opinion, because also if you're looking at your phone right away, it's immediately sucking dopamine out of
Yes.
you. Like it's making it so that you're going to be chasing dopamine all day long.
Mm-hmm.
My general rule that I try to stick to, and I'm not perfect, is I don't look at my phone until after my workout in the morning. And so, which generally I start my workout within 30 minutes. Like I have a little bit of coffee, let my dog walk around the backyard, just kind of sit there, see what the weather's like, figure out, will I do an outdoor workout? Will we go for our walk today? Like just kind of ease into it. And then
Sure.
after I allow myself my little like social media or play Wordle or something like that. So yeah, I
Yes.
love that rule. And then it's like a bookend, bedtime. It's like at least 15 minutes of reading some pages before
Yes.
bed so that you can just kind of like unwind. I love that.
Yeah, me too. It's like a little sanctuary. There's just something really sacred about that time that I just think, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting how much surfaces in that time as well. If there is stuff going on, that's the time that it'll come up and it'll remind you that it's there.
Yeah.
It's useful.
Yeah. And for me, it's like, it's so important to me to have it. I always say this, like my mornings are definitely sacred. Even my evenings, they're pretty much the same, 50 days out of 51 days, they're the same.
Yeah.
And even when I'm traveling, even when I'm
Yes.
away, it's just, I try to go to bed at a decent hour.
Yeah, me
It's
too.
very rare that I'm going to be up later than, 10 p.m.
Yeah, I'm with you. I
So,
love it. I'm all for the
yeah.
sleep.
Yes. So, okay, we're getting into habits now.
I
So
know.
we're saying mornings and nights are where you can make something sacred for yourself. So let's get into habits a little deeper. From your experience, what's one of the biggest myths about habit change that people still believe? I'd love to hear your point of view on what exactly is a habit and how do we develop them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's start with what exactly is a habit. And we'll start by defining that, and then we can look at, kind of the myths around that. So we look at habits, and I think we often assume that it's something that's bad for us, like we've developed a habit. So, it's not necessarily a good thing. But, habitual behavior, it's just our normal way of doing things. It's something that we repeat, like a pattern that we repeat, a way of behaving. And so they don't always have to be negative, right? They don't have to be bad for us. But I think the biggest myth is that habits are formed because of a lack of willpower. Like this idea that any bad habits or habits that are detrimental to our well-being is purely because we're lazy or that we don't have the determination to do anything about it. That is fundamentally wrong. It's just wrong. It's a very convenient lie that some people must, tell themselves to beat themselves up with. And nobody gains from falling down that narrative route. Yeah, it couldn't be more wrong. And we'll talk about that in a second. Um, it's all about the wiring of the brain. So when you look at a habit, there's a trigger for that habit, and that trigger could be that we're stressed, or it could be that we're, in a social environment. Whatever that trigger is, it then sparks an action, and that's the habitual behavior itself. And that could be having a glass of wine, it could be scrolling on our phone, whatever it might be. And then that brings a reward, some kind of result. And often that's a dopamine trigger. And so it's feeding into that buzz that we get in our brain at that point. And so that's essentially kind of like the pattern of the 3 steps of a habit. And I guess they're formed in so many different ways, aren't they? And it's not about laziness. This is about societal conditioning. A lot of these habits were ingrained in us. We saw it around us as children, or we grew up with it in our formative years. Even in our first experiences of the workplace, they might have been ingrained as coping mechanisms. It could even be a learned behavior in terms of from our peers in the workplace if it wasn't when we were growing up. So there's a whole different myriad of reasons why we have these habits, and none of them include laziness or not having willpower. And there's another myth that I hear, and I know I've broken my rule of kind of having one thing to stick to, which you'll notice I do regularly. The other myth that I hear a lot is that it takes 21 days to break a habit. I don't know whether you've heard that with your clients as well. People think 3 weeks is all they need, right, to break the habit.
Yes, of course. And I always emphasize that it takes 21 days to disrupt a habit.
Yes, I love that.
Disruption of a habit takes the way habits are formed, which I'm sure you're going to get into this because I asked you, is through repetition of doing the new thing or not doing the old thing, which is why I enforce this with the women that I work with when they become frustrated. Like, oh, well, I did so well for 3 weeks. It's like, yeah, you are disrupting a habit and trying to form a new one, and you've got to keep going. Even if you had a slip, doesn't matter. That doesn't undo all the new habit building that you're trying to do. It's like if you're trying to form a habit of working out in the morning and you skip 2 or 3 days, it's not over for you. You're still working on that habit. So, okay, keep going.
No, you're absolutely right. It's exactly that. I love that phrase as well. It like disrupts the habit in 3 weeks because that's exactly it. But to create new habits, I mean, if I was to look back and try and put a timeline on how long it took me to develop a wine habit, I don't know. I mean, you could argue that was a long time coming from childhood, from seeing family and friends just like wind down with a glass of wine in the evening, cope with stress by opening a bottle of wine. I mean, there's so much conditioning and narrative formation that goes on throughout years. Who knows whether that took longer than 3 weeks to develop, did that habit of mine. So in terms of reestablishing new habits, yes, it doesn't take as long as that. I'm not talking about people having to spend years to develop new habits, but it can often take longer than 3 weeks. And so that's often a myth that needs to be unpicked. And it takes as long as it takes, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be hard the whole way. And I think this is where we get the frustration and the fear when people think about habit change. They think, oh my goodness, if it's going to take me 6 months to embed a new habit or 100 days or whatever it might be, I don't think I can survive for that long. And it's like, but it's not going to be hard for the whole of that journey. It's so much easier than you think it's going to be. There are going to be hard days. Don't get me wrong. There are going to be challenging days, but there are going to be challenging days in life, right? So you choose your hard. You're choosing your difficult here. But yeah, it doesn't have to be as long or as painful as you think it's going to be, but it happens when it happens, and it needs repetition. It needs it needs the unpicking of what's the trigger. What can I replace as the action that I'm going to do? So instead of reaching for the glass of wine or reaching for my phone, what am I going to do? Do I reach for a book? Do I go for a walk? And everybody will have their own toolkit of things that they can replace at that moment. And then ideally, you want that action to be something that gives you that same reward, that's going to give you that same feeling of either self-soothing in a lovely way, like doing some yoga or some breathing or dancing around your living room. Or it might be, a little dopamine buzz, like getting some fresh air or laughing with a friend or whatever it might be. Because the trigger, we can't really change. We can manage it a bit if it's stress. Or if it's, if there's somebody that triggers us or a place that we go to that triggers us. And we don't really want the reward to change. We want to still feel a buzz. We want to feel happy. We want to feel soothed. What we can control is the action in between. And we can control that quite quickly. And we can develop the new habit quite easily by focusing on how to replace that habit whilst we do some work trying to figure out those triggers and explore those triggers. But the action is the quickest and the easiest one to attend to whilst we do the deeper work on the triggers.
So to the woman who wants to be 6 months sober or 20 pounds lighter or a year sober, whatever the thing is it takes what it takes. It takes the amount of time that it takes. The way to speed it up is faster repetition.
Yes.
Your day to day is going to start to feel more normal than your weekends because they happen more frequently. your days, Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday, happen more frequently than the weekends. And
Yeah.
so that's why it can take a longer time for someone to get a weekend of no alcohol under their belt. And I find this even with my own kind of like eating habits and diet habits, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need a weekend where I don't binge eat.
Right.
Like, when will I have a Saturday that I don't treat myself too much
Yeah.
because of where I'm seemingly depriving myself
Mhm.
in other areas of my life? And so, this is what I tell women, we don't want this to be deprivation. When you are trying to form a new habit, you can't have the
No.
deprivation. So if you're on a sober streak and you're really worried about it, eat the cake
Yes.
or
Yes.
do something luxurious for yourself
Yeah.
that will be your new treat.
Yeah.
Because if you feel deprived, it's going to take you longer to form that habit.
Yeah. It's the opposite. You almost want to feel like you've got an excess of amazing things happening in your life so that you're not looking at the thing that you're missing, right? You want to fill it with so much joy and so much awesomeness that you're like, this is what I could have been doing all of those times I was drinking. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and don't binge the
Yes.
alternative.
Yes. Right.
Like
Yeah.
I have my thing is sometimes on Saturdays I eat too many treats.
Yeah.
And it's like if I had just had a treat on a Wednesday,
Let's spread it
like
out.
I don't need 5 cupcakes on Saturday. And so
I love
it's
that.
like making sure happiness comes from making sure that we have something to look forward to
Yeah.
every single day.
Mhm.
And to your point earlier, that morning, that sacred morning, and looking forward to that, and that evening, like all of those things that we are cultivating in our lives to
Yeah.
look forward to. So, okay, I feel like I derailed you there. I
No,
could
you
talk to
didn't at
you.
all. That was awesome.
This is going to be like a 3 hour
Yeah.
podcast
Sorry,
episode.
people. I do talk.
It's okay. I do too. We're two A-type women and we have a lot to say. Okay.
Oh,
So let's flip in. I think we've covered what is a habit.
yes.
We've covered two myths about
Mm.
habits. Are there any habits that you are currently working on breaking or changing?
Yeah, there's nothing that I'm working on breaking. I tackled the beast was alcohol. Taking down alcohol was like the life-changing habit. Yeah, that was everything. That was amazing because then other things happen, like you establish sleep habits that are amazing. So it's like new habits form out of ditching that habit that you didn't even realize that were going to open up for you. It's quite an amazing experience to go through. And then following that, I ditched caffeine, and that made a huge difference. That was lovely. And then kind of changed my eating habits, ditched more of the ultra processed foods and getting more whole foods. So that was lovely. That was a period of exploration. The one that I'm working on at the moment is developing a new habit, and I really want to embed this one. And I'm only in the early days of this, so you can hold me to this one, Lindsay, in like a year's time, see where I'm at. I really need to start strength training more. I've done a lot of running throughout my life. I've done a lot of yoga, but I think my muscles are pretty much twig-like if they're not relied on to be running or doing yoga. I just don't have that real strength that I think I'm starting to feel now in my 40s with perimenopause and all of that, that it's like, oh, I need to do something to build that bone density even more than just like the running and stuff. And particularly when you start to look at that whole world that's waiting for us in terms of, potential osteoporosis, etc. So yeah, that's a big one for me. And I'm excited about it, but I'm also nervous about it because it's something that I've hopped in and out of throughout my life, but I've never really been taken along by, lifting weights. But I'm curious, right? I love an adventure and I love trying something new. And if sobriety's taught me anything, it's that I'm always trying new things. So here we go.
I'm excited for you. I have been doing strength training for many years, but I just recently, in the last few months, started to increase my weight like
Amazing.
a
How's it
lot.
going for you?
It's shockingly amazing, to be honest. Like, I was surprised. I have been using 8, 10,
Right.
12, 15 pound dumbbells
Mhm.
for years.
Yeah, that's what I've got at
And
home. That's what I use at home. But I'm like, no, I need to go bigger, right?
bigger,
Yeah.
bigger. A few months ago, I started using 25s and 35s, and I was shocked at how quickly I was able to do it and how strong I
Oh
got
my
in a
gosh.
short time period. So yes,
Lindsay, that's
I'm excited for this.
amazing. I love that for you. That's awesome.
Yes, okay, I'll add this to our shared accountability
Yeah.
doc that we have.
Yeah. I've said it now. I've put it out there.
That's
There's
right.
no
And not just to
escaping.
me. If you're listening and you want to hold Claire accountable to her strength training habit, you can drop a comment in there of encouragement on this
What
podcast.
have I
Please
done?
share.
I should have picked something easy, like, I just want to drink more water in my days. No, I do that already. Here we
Darn
go.
it. I know that's what happens. And okay, so we're going to go off on a little bit of a tangent
Go
here
for it.
because what you just said really ignited something in me. One of the reasons why I see resistance in women about quitting drinking or doing something new, like strength training, because when we are successful at it or when we accomplish it, it's like, oh, well, what do I have to do now?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, now I have to keep strength training. Now I
Yes.
have to stay not drinking. Now there's going to be more expectations on me. And I really just want this fear of what's next to just embrace it because there's always going to be something else that you want to conquer. Sometimes it's going to be drinking more water in a day. Sometimes it's going to be figuring out how to pay off, I don't know, $100,000 in debt. Who
Right.
knows? Like there's always going to be things and
Yes.
goals that we have to
Mm-hmm.
master. And the point of our conversation today is you're introducing very easy ways to make this all easier. So, mindset and identity go hand in hand. How can someone begin to shift that inner dialogue that says, this is just who I am when it comes to their habits?
Yeah. So the inner dialogue. Yeah. The way when I think about the inner dialogue, I just look at it as a total piece of work because and in two senses there. It's a piece of work in the way that it takes us down. Like the inner critic is often the most damaging, one of the most damaging things, particularly in trying to habit change, because it drags us down and it speaks to us in a way that we wouldn't accept anybody to speak to anybody that's close to us. We just wouldn't accept it, but we accept it for ourselves. But it's also a piece of work in that it's hard work sometimes to tap into that inner dialogue and to be able to unravel some of those deeper beliefs that keep us stuck and that limit us. They do often keep us quite small and they run so deep in terms of we've been telling ourselves a lot of these things for years. They are well and truly embedded, decades sometimes. And then, of course, over that time, we start to accept them as truth. So when we tell ourselves, well, this is just who I am, we actually start to believe that we can't change, that maybe there's something fundamentally wrong with us as a person. And I think the most powerful thing that we can do is start to question that and to look at it and to go, is that true? Is that absolutely true? And the answer is always going to be no, it's not true. And if we ask anybody that knows us really well, like those friends that have known us for years that you can say anything to, they will always hold up a mirror and say, no, that's not you. That's not you at all. And even if it's really hard to challenge that inner dialogue and to question that and to look at it as, is it true or not? One thing you can say to yourself is, okay, well, even if I believe that that's true about myself, and if I believe that that's who I am, that doesn't have to be who I become. And it doesn't have to be who I am moving forwards. Like, even if you've been a certain person up until this point, and I know that I'm heavily going back to the sobriety side of thing here, but I would never have thought I could be a non-drinker ever, ever. And I thoroughly expected to just have a month off drinking and maybe two at tops. And the fact is that you can always make that choice as to who you want to become. So if you are stuck in those old patterns and you think that that's who you are, just question it and just allow yourself that excitement to let that question hang there and think about, but who could I be? You know, like, who do I want to be? And what does that look like? And when you start to question them and replace the beliefs that you have about yourself with beliefs about the person you want to be, and you start to imagine who she can be, there's power there. I tell you one activity that I think is quite fun to do sometimes. And it's like just grab a scrap of paper and to write on that piece of paper everything that you love about yourself and try and fill the whole piece of paper and just see how that feels. And I think for a lot of people, it feels really hard to do. Whereas if you gave us a piece of paper and you said, fill it with everything you don't like about yourself, we could probably fill it quite easily. And I think there's real power and there's a message that comes through when we do something like that. And we genuinely try and fill a piece of paper with as many things as we can write down that we love about ourselves. And it always brings me back to something that a meditation teacher said to me like years ago. She said, like, imagine a list of everything that you love in the world. Just look at that list and just imagine kind of going down that list now. And of course I'm there like, okay, so my daughter, my husband, my, nature, I love the birds, I like going for walks and running and, and I'm listing all of these different things. And then she said, so where are you on that list? I wasn't even on the list. She was like, how far down the list are you? I wasn't on my own list. Nowhere on my list did I even factor. And I remember getting really emotional at the time because I was like, I'm not even on the list. I'm not even on my own list. What's going on, right? Like, oh my God, like, I've got this one precious body, this one precious life, this one precious soul. Why aren't I on my list? My goodness, Lindsay, it was just, yeah. So it's always something that I think is a useful activity to bring us back down to, just how much we put ourselves down and we limit ourselves. But you could ask somebody that loves us to fill a page with things that are amazing about us and they would fill it in no time.
I do know. You're taking me back to my yoga teacher training and in our graduation and our closing ceremony, I'll never forget this. And I was still a very heavy drinker during
Yeah.
this time when I took this.
Yeah, I was
And I actually remember I was very hungover for my graduation for yoga teacher training. And we had it outside because, again, it was during the pandemic and it was kind of chilly. And we did this little ceremony where we would walk down the aisle to the teacher where she would give us a certificate and she put this beautiful little scarf that they got for us around our necks. And what we were supposed to do as each person walked was just say a word to describe them. And I remember walking down this little, the little like aisle and just crying because I couldn't believe how this group of people that I had spent, 9 months with viewed me.
Yes.
And I mean, I only knew them for 9 months and they
Right.
were saying these things about me. And it's like, wow, I don't see any of this in myself. And we have the ability to change.
Yeah.
To your point, we can become whoever the hell we want.
Yeah.
And all that takes, and I say all that takes, it's not
I
easy,
know.
but we have to challenge everything we think about ourselves and the world. Like,
Yeah.
we have to look at what is true.
Yes. Yeah.
This has been such a beautiful conversation, and we're not done yet. This is my main message, and I think it's a lot of yours as well in your talks, is you can become whoever you
Yes.
want.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need a little support to get there, but you can become whoever you want. You're also a writer.
Yes.
I want you to tell us how writing plays into your own self-awareness or transformation work.
Yeah, writing. It's always going to have a massive piece of my heart. I mean, I was a literature graduate at uni, and then I was an English teacher when I came out of uni. And so I've always kind of made sense of the world through words and through writing. And yeah, I kind of used that to unpick my emotions. I did as a kid, and I still do now as an adult. But never more so than when I stopped drinking, actually, which is quite interesting. It's like the floodgates opened at that point, and I just had so much that needed to be said, not necessarily to the world. I started sharing it with the world after a while, but to start with, it was just a way of getting stuff that was in my mind, like feelings, trauma, pain, grief, frustration, just to try and make sense of it, and kind of outpouring it onto the page gave me a chance to not only just get it out of my system, get it out of my body, but then to look at it and go, oh, wow, okay, you've been holding that inside you for a long, long time. And yeah, and then there became more power in sharing some of those stories with other people and realizing that this helps, that in knowing that we're not the only person that feels like this, because we often don't share our worst moments. We don't share the grief. We don't share the pain. We just go out there and put our face onto the world and pretend everything's fine. And so, yeah, when I started getting feedback from that it was helping when I was sharing, my work through articles and blogs and stuff. So I do recommend to clients to journal. I definitely do. I think it's really important to try and capture our thoughts for the very reasons I just mentioned. Any feelings, good, bad, gratitude, frustrations, whatever's going on. But interestingly, I've got a client that hates journaling. She absolutely hates it and just doesn't work for her. So I suggested emailing me instead. And just whenever she's got something that she wants to share, any kind of anger, frustration, or she's having a great day, she's really grateful, to just drop it on an email to me. It's amazing just how much that's working for her. Like in not having a book and a journal to have to write in, but feeling like she's actually talking to me, which she is, and getting that kind of validation and that feedback from me and a bit of back and forth. It's achieving exactly the same process that journaling would for her and taking her through that process, but without feeling like she's got to capture it on a page in front of her. So it's like, if anybody's listening to this and it's like, oh, I just can't sit with a book and a pen, or I don't really want to do that. If you've got somebody that, like a trusted friend, or, somebody that could just be on the receiving end, or even if you never send them, you just like type them out and send them to yourself, whatever works. But it's just a different way of doing it. And sometimes it works if journaling's not a fit, but there is a place for writing and getting stuff physically out of the body and onto the page. And then you can have a big old cathartic burn of everything if you want to, if you've got loads of memories that you just don't want to hold on to anymore. I've done that before too, just like, or ripped things up and get it out of your system.
I love the ritual of it as well. Claire, thank you so much for your wisdom and calm today. It's like taking a deep breath just being in this conversation with you. And I hope the woman who is listening to this feels that energy too. And to you, dear listener, if this episode stirred something in you, that's not an accident. Maybe it's time to stop trying harder and start listening more closely to what you really need. And of course, I'm not going to let you get away today without an assignment, because action is what drives transformation. This week, pick one small moment in your day, maybe brushing your teeth or your first sip of coffee, and turn it into a mindfulness anchor. No pressure, no perfection, just presence. And notice how it feels. So, Claire, share us really quick, just a reminder of your stop for a moment method.
Yeah, so this is the method that you can do. It's super quick. We've used it for years. And it's easy to remember because it's an acronym. So the STOP stands for each part of this 4-part process. And the S stands for stop. So just notice moments in your day when you can take the time to pause. You can do it even first thing in the morning when you get out of bed, or before you're about to go to sleep. Or it might be before you're about to enter an important meeting that you've got, or even when you're starting to lose your patience with your kids, whatever it might be. Just stop. And then the T stands for just take a breath, take a moment, take a few breaths, create that pocket of stillness, and just be aware, come back into your body. The O stands for observe, check in with yourself, observe what's coming up for you, observe how you're feeling, and remind yourself of what you need to do to move forwards. And then the P stands for proceed. And that means move forward, decide what your next step is going to be, and remind yourself that you've totally got this.
I love it. And if you want more calm in your corner, go follow Claire and explore her work at claireroberts.com. I've gone ahead and linked that in the show notes for you. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please rate it, share it with your friends, and leave a comment. We are so glad that you joined us today. Thank you so much, Claire. I know that women are going to be taking this advice and implementing it right away.
Thank you so much for having me.